Chiefs have their chance right now to keep it going and take that offense to the next step. The blitz is going to play a factor. How much of one today on Locked On Chiefs?
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, friends and neighbors. It is another Red Friday in Chiefs Kingdom. Thanks for joining us live here on Thursday evening as we get this Friday show ready for you. We are very excited because there's a lot to go over as the Chiefs take the next step forward. The first quarter of the season's in the past. It's ready to be built on. There's a few things that they have to get done. We're going to go through them all today. Thanks for being with us and making us your first listen. Check out another Locked On show for your next one, as well as making sure that you're sub here on the YouTube channel. Like, sub, hit the bell, do all the good stuff. Then get over to the audio side, get with Spotify or get on Apple or any of the free platforms because we're free every day for you, 5 days a week plus some. Everywhere you can find a platform to put it for you, you can get it for free. We're very excited about that. We're brought to you today by PrizePicks. They are the easiest and most exciting way for you to get daily fantasy sports going. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL, and you can use our code LockedOnNFL, and your first deposit will be matched up to $100. So check them out at PrizePicks. This is a team that has a lot to conquer. We're going to get to it today. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, NFL33.com, as well as RGR Football. Joined by my co-host, Chris Clark of Chiefs Corner, where you can find cap information. Efficiency on third down is the story of the year. We're going to be tracking that. But first, we're going to start with game predictions coming up later. We're going to start looking at the matchups here in the second. But it all comes down to this. Topic of the day, Mahomes versus the Blitz. How do they help him out knowing that they're going to see more action? What is the solution to take a step forward this week against the Vikings?
Biggest solution is to make sure you know where you're going on stunts and twists. I mean, that's really what hammered Kansas City against the Jets, and that really hurt them. You look at what they're going to be doing this game against the Vikings. The Vikings have blitzed 57% of the time so far this season. Generally speaking, in the past, it is not good to blitz Patrick Mahomes. We'll see if they could try to continue that trend against Kansas City.
I think that it's going to be something they're going to try. The question is going to be, can you dissuade them with a couple of good reps? If they send it a few times and you're able to pick it up, you have good communication from the center outward. Yeah, probably, I hope to see a double tight end in early and run 12 personnel the first drive, maybe two drives to really dissuade that so you can hammer it when it comes and take care of business. I like that concept. It kind of relates back to a little bit more old school like we saw last week with the run game. Do you think that can work, or would you go a different direction?
No, I think that can work. To me, it's basic. Use your motion as Kansas City's been using the motion. Figure out where the blitz is coming from. Mahomes is one of the best in the NFL at identifying where that blitz is coming from, and he's going to know the offense that they're in, where something's going to open up, and who's going to open up. So I think it should be okay. I'm really curious to see if they continue to blitz as much as they have, because I really don't think it's going to be something that will be productive against Mahomes. I think it's actually something that could really burn him. It may it may keep him to shorter plays, but I don't think that's going to help them long term.
Yeah, it's kind of that feast or famine, right? If you make the wrong move at the wrong time, he will make you pay. And that's, in the end, what's going to end up hurting them. Now, this is a team that they have some talent, especially on defense. Obviously, the elder statesman in the back of it in Harrison Smith. You have Danielle Hunter coming after the quarterback here. Hunter's a really unique one because you never quite know what he's doing. Even when you watch his film, he's going to have, I think, an advantage in a little bit more power than Juwan Taylor. But Taylor's, I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like he's got himself a little bit more organized pre-snap. So alignment-wise, making sure that he's on the line of scrimmage. And if now he can settle down into getting that timing back a little bit, it feels like his initial get-off should be able to control what Hunter's going to bring in particular. But it's about not giving up the leverage and having to get to the point where you're getting holding penalties.
Yeah, and that's important for him. And the big question is does he have it figured out? They didn't call it last week against the Jets, but it's a question of, is a different crew going to call it versus, what they're doing. So I would hope that he's got it figured out, and maybe the league is starting to back off a little bit on it, and that would be great. When it comes to Danielle Hunter, he's still going to be a threat regardless. And Juwan Taylor has played very well outside of the penalties, which have somewhat been outside of his control to an extent. But when you look at this defense, it's can you stand the pressure? When what they didn't show last week against the Jets is that they could handle twists and stunts very well. I think that could be a problem when you're looking at a team that likes to blitz you already. Maybe the Vikings aren't going to do a ton of blitzing. Maybe they're just going to send forward, but the twists and the stunts are going to be wild. And at times they did that. The Jets did that against the Chiefs last week.
Well, and I think from what we've heard from the team this week, they seem, the coaching staff, to understand that, that not everything's filtered out yet, that they got to keep trying to find that formula that's going to work. And for me, especially against the blitz, that comes back to the quick game early on the first drives. We saw them go 15, 14, and I believe 12 play drives last week. If they can do that by hitting the unders, I love Rashee Rice on the slants and the drags. He doesn't do enough of those, right? So let's try to get that worked in. Hit that quick game that can also then complement the run game. And I think that's how you can at least start the game off, by hammering and peppering that defense a little bit, maybe soften it up a little.
Yeah, and use Sky Moore, use Kadarius Toney, and get them going on in-breaking routes to help with the blitz. Those are two guys that should be able to shake man coverage at least close. We'll see whether or not that turns out, but you got to get your guys involved early in the game. Rashee Rice has played very well when he's gotten chances, but it seems like he gets chances later in the second quarter and maybe in the third quarter, but then disappears first quarter and fourth quarter. That's not always the case, but that just seems to be the way they're doing it. If you think that Rice is going to be a big part of your game plan going forward for the rest of the year because of what he's shown, use him early on. Put him in the first 15 plays. Give him a chance to go and do something that he hasn't had a chance to do, and maybe you can have a big game that's going to help your offense.
That's absolutely true. Now, how do they get this work done? How do they get this game flow to go? We're going to talk predictions coming up later in the show. Next up will be matchups and what they have to do to attack certain aspects of this thing. But right now, I know that you want to look good. It's the end of summer here. We're getting into fall. The leaves are turning, and it's coming on. And right now, you might be in that tweener time where you want an athletic fit and you want to look good. You want to be a little bit more dressy. And right now, Bird Dogs is here to help you out because their stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and the leg and give you that truly sculpted look that is perfect in the fall. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing. They do board shorts as well as Lululemon, but they fit better and they give you the unrestricted movement that you're looking for. Better than regular shorts do with that stiff restricted cotton. This gives you a little bit of give and take. It's really, I think, that the foundation of what their products do, and that they're fix the issue with that inventing this cloud knit fabric that lets you breathe and lets you move, still has a little bit of stretch, but still looks good and slims you down a little bit. It's all without sacrificing the movement that you're looking for, especially when you're out and about. It uses that anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that cools you and dries you all day long, keeps you fresh. Bird Dogs are functional for any occasion, whether it's out there on the golf course, whether you're tailgating, whether you're throwing the ball around itself. You can get in and do what you need to do. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL, and you can use our promo code LockedOnNFL and check out at your free Bird Dogs water bottle when you place your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL for a free water bottle at checkout, plus the great clothes that you're going to get. You don't want to take you don't want to miss taking advantage of this deal, and you don't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. Now, what I don't want to take off is the lid on this defense, because when you take a look, it is a three-man rotation here of what the Vikings are going to try to do. Kirk Cousins coming off of an interesting game that, what did he throw for? 139 yards, a couple of touchdowns, a couple of picks. Both those touchdowns went to Justin Jefferson, arguably the best wide receiver in this game. But he got, much like Travis Kelce, he got the dominating target share from Kirk Cousins in that last ball game. And you can say that they can spread it around. They do have that ability. They have guys like Osborne and obviously the rookie Addison, who has scored a couple of touchdowns this season so far, and he has looked good at times. But for me, if you could take away or at least focus on Cousins to Jefferson, I think that sets up the rest of what your defense wants to do, because I don't know that Kirk Cousins can do enough to raise the rest of the team around him to compete with the Chiefs. Do you?
I don't think so. I think that if you look at Kirk Cousins and what he's shown over his time in the NFL, really, he stepped up a couple of times again when he was with the Commanders, or I guess it was the Redskins when he was there. He's played well at times with the Vikings, but he is a statue in the pocket, and that causes him problems. If Chris Jones has a big game, that's going to cause Kirk Cousins problems. And he threw a very bad pick six last week against Carolina Panthers, and actually really paid for it too, trying to tackle the guy, which got to give him credit on that. But he's not a guy that's going to strap the team on his back and will them across the finish line. He can be a good quarterback if he has good players around him. But if you're able to slow down Jefferson, which is going to be a tall task for Kansas City, I think you're going to be in a pretty good position. But the other part of that with Jefferson is you don't necessarily have to keep him from not catching anything. It's tackle him as soon as he catches the ball. If you can do that on a consistent basis, he's going to get his numbers. That's just the type of player he is. And the Chiefs have great corners, but that's a tall task to ask them to shut him down to no catches at all during the entire game.
Yeah,
and they don't
absolutely.
travel.
Fair enough. Well, and it's interesting that Spags actually mentioned that this week, that L'Jarius Sneed has the opportunity to possibly travel with Jefferson this week because of Shamar Connor and his at least he's been early in games lately, right? So he gives you that nickel where you can keep McDuffie and Sneed on the outside. We'll see if that can hold up, because I feel like Sneed's rounding into the season right now. He did give up 56 yards last week, but I feel like it's coming along and starting to click. And I know, except for one pass that got away from him, McDuffie's been very solid as well, 47 yards given up last week. If you put those two together, that's the entirety of the passing game from Minnesota last week. So I'm not terribly scared. Yes, they're going to target Hawkinson, of course. Yes, they're going to try to get the rookie involved in Addison again, but I do feel that it's about controlling Jefferson and making Cousins hold the ball, and I do feel that they have an opportunity to get their defensive line home this week.
Yeah, the Vikings offensive line has given up a ton of pressure, and I think they have something like 47 pressures given up on the season so far. That is a recipe to be able to pressure the quarterback. If you can get in Cousins' face, that's going to help. And you're right. I think that they have to feel pretty good about their matchups. Again, I don't expect them to shut Justin Jefferson down, but if you can hold him to 70, even 80 yards with a touchdown, I think you still feel like that's a win for that type of player against this defense. And the bigger question I have is, you talk about it earlier, are they going to travel with L'Jarius Sneed? Are they going to put him in that situation where he goes up and does something like that? That would be fascinating to watch. They haven't done that very often. And I think you're right. He's finally starting to round into shape when it comes to the knee. So maybe that is something that they're going to be looking at. But let's not forget the other problem that creates is it creates other problems on the back end. So your safeties need to know exactly what they're doing and what's going to happen if corners flip. It affects everybody in the secondary. It affects sometimes even the linebackers to an extent, depending on what you're running.
It does. And it comes down to, how do you choose to attack it? Can you keep up with all those changes? Because you're going to see a little bit of variation. And you're going to have an opportunity that you're going to have to stop the run. Alexander Madison, especially for you fantasy guys, I'm sure you're breathing a sigh of relief because he finally kind of popped out. 95 yards on the ground last week on 17 attempts. The interesting thing for me that I always have to keep in mind is they were very similar to the Chiefs last week in that they called 22 run attempts and only 20 pass plays. Dropbacks for Kirk Cousins added up to 20. So they're actually over 50% run. So they have Cam Akers, who was recently acquired, right? And that's an interesting 1-2 punch to me. It could be that they might opt to play the keep away game and try to keep the Chiefs offense off of the field. They've been very sparing. What was it? It was 5 attempts for Akers last week. He did rack up 40 yards, 8 yards a carry. So do you think that we should expect them to have to double down on the run? Maybe they get Nick Bolton down, get him back because they have 2 backs now. Have they been saving Akers for this game?
I don't know that I would say that they've been saving him for this game. I'm really curious to see whether or not they use him in that sense and how they use them, because one of the other things that they've really struggled with is turnovers. Kansas City hasn't forced a ton of turnovers, but the Vikings have turned the ball over. Cousins has turned the ball over. The running backs have fumbled the ball. It's a problem, and it could lead to things for Kansas City on short fields, which could lead to a higher score for them. But that's the big question. Are they going to continue to go with the run if you're turning the ball over like they have? They're one of the worst teams when it comes to turnover differential in the NFL right now. And that makes it a big problem when you're going up against a team like Kansas City, whose defense is playing very well, even though they're not getting the turnovers. Are they going to get the chance this week? But you also look at the fact that their offense hasn't been playing well, and you would expect that at some point they're going to start figuring some things out. If that happens this week, this game could get out of hand.
If you take a step back and you look at what does work for them or has worked at the times, obviously last week was last week. Sometimes that's just a floor. You go back to the Chargers game when they played them and you take a look, it was 367 yards for Cousins, and he peppered Jefferson and Hawkinson with 13 and 11 targets each. Then Addison came in at 8. So if you force him out of the run early, you're going to get a chance to try to take the ball away in the air. And I think that plays into what the Chiefs ought to be doing. I like that matchup. And I think in particular, I like George Karlaftis this week in being able to battle a right tackle that I think he can get some groove on. And especially if you have a couple of the blitz packages in that Spags has been using lately, I think you're going to get an opportunity to send a free rusher from time to time as well.
Yeah, and you definitely should. And the other part of it that we don't know, and this is something to watch, is Bradbury has been dealing with the back issues. He's going to play in the center, and that could be huge for Kansas City. I mean, obviously, Chris Jones can rush from the outside. He has at times. But if Bradbury's out and you're going up against a backup center and you're going against an interior that is allowing pressure, this whole Chiefs defense could eat. I would not be shocked with Wharton getting pressure. Now, whether or not he actually gets home and gets a bunch of sacks, that's going to be a whole other question. But I think you can figure at this point, Chris Jones is probably going to get a sack this game, if not more. And Karlaftis is going to be putting pressure regardless of where he's going to be rushing from. So you have to figure that Mike Dana is going to be a question is what can he do? And you look at the rest of the defensive line. And you also look at the fact that they're probably going to be playing a defensive tackle that hasn't played a lot for him so far this season because Dickerson is likely out. So you're going to have Coburn or Farrell.
And that's the next interesting question. Like, that's a toss-up, right? Who gets to suit up? Who gets to get some game action for the first time this season? I'm looking forward to finding out. We're going to talk about that as well as our game predictions and guys that we have to watch to jump out at us here coming up in a minute. But I know you might want to get on the action. It's certainly easy to do it if you want to get on daily fantasy sports with our friends over at PrizePicks because they're the largest independent DFS platform in North America. It's the easiest way to play DFS. You just pick their numbers. Instead of battling thousands of players, you're just doing a more or less. They give you a line and you choose above it or below it. 2 to 6 players per entry, and you are off and running. As little as 2, that does make things kind of easy. But once you get into the flow of it, is Patrick going to hit 300 yards? Are you going to be able to contain Justin Jefferson under 100? Those are 2 lines where you just have to make a decision. You go ahead and you get those entered. It takes about 60 seconds to do. You can link up to 6 entries there, and you can turn $10 into $250 in just a couple of taps because they're giving away at this point the most advantageous right now is 25 times the money this football season from your entry. So it makes life super simple, and it makes it easy on their app because if you go along, you get the discounts, you get everything that you want from the projections, and you get all in this app that makes it easy. It even offers right now, you can get Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits as well as what you're trying to get done in your bets for this football season. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use our code LockedOnNFL for your first deposit match for up to $100. Right now, that's the easiest way to do it. It's super simple. It's at prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL and you'll get a first deposit price match up to $100 that you can get in right now. It's very, very fun. It's the easiest and best way to play daily fantasy sports right there. It's PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Now, the rotation is something certainly we have to figure out. Do you have a preference right now? Farrell has a little bit of experience. Coburn has a lot of upside. Do you have a preference for who gets to get in this game? I'm guessing it's only one.
Yeah, I would guess it's only one as well, and I don't really have a preference. I would think that Coburn makes the most sense. You drafted him this year. You want to see what he can give you, and you want to see what he's able to do against a Vikings offensive line that is good in pass protection and they're decent in run blocking. But I do think that that's the direction you want to go as opposed to Farrell. But at the same time, Farrell's a guy you just traded for. And the bigger question really becomes not necessarily who you want to see. I I would lean Coburn, but what have they seen in practice? What have those two shown them so far? That's really going to be the big question.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm just itching to see Coburn on the field, so I would agree with you.
I get that.
You're right. At the end of the day, who are the guys that can step out and take over this game and make a big difference? On the Viking side, for me, the guy that they have to watch is Jordan Addison, because I think you're going to give the appropriate amount of attention to Justin Jefferson. You have to. I expect him to be bracketed, but who's the next guy that could hurt you? Because maybe he sneaks up on you a little bit. You know who Hawkinson is. You know what you have to do there. And I think that kind of telltale slot action, taking up some of the space that Hawkinson already occupies and draws the attention of the defense, is probably the best way to go. So that's what I'll keep an eye on from the Vikings. What about you?
For me, obviously, you talked about Justin Jefferson. That's somebody you got to keep an eye on. Kirk Cousins seems to have a lot of trust in Osborne. I'm not saying that he's going to be a guy that's going to, go for 200 yards or anything, but Cousins likes him. He throws to him on a regular basis. It's not something he shies away from. I think you need to watch that, just because I do think that Kansas City is going to be taking Jefferson seriously. And the question becomes with him, are they going to double him? Are they going to, put a corner on him and then put a safety over the top? If they do that, then you open up other guys that are going to be running at the back end of the defense. So maybe you see a situation with Osborne where he is able to do something. That's kind of where I would look when it comes to their offense. If you flip it over to the other side, you already mentioned Danielle Hunter. I think that's a good one. I'm going to talk Harrison Smith for a moment, and it's just mainly because Mahomes has been trying to look deep at times. Harrison Smith doesn't have great speed, but he is a very good safety. And if you can manipulate the safety a little bit, I think they have a chance to take some shots in this one. I like the Chiefs wide receivers, but that's the big question. Harrison Smith is the guy that makes a big difference on their back end.
Agreed. When you're talking about their defense, I'm going to keep an eye on Marcus Davenport. I think you got to remove him from the game. You know what Hunter is again. So attack. They're probably second best pass rusher. He had 3 pressures and a sack last week. So don't want to let him get off on a roll or pick up where he left off. So I'm going to keep an eye on him and where he's aligning, mostly on the right side of the defense. But every now and then they'll flip him around too. So keep an eye out there. For the Chiefs, it comes down to who's going to step out. I think Travis is going to be Travis. Hopefully he's a little less frustrated, a little smoother this time. But somebody's got to step up. And I think the way that they've been feeding Rashee Rice, my bet is they're going to continue that. And this is where it starts to come together. We're 4 games in. He's had some advantageous sparks, but it hasn't been consistent. Hopefully he can do away with the drops. And I feel like this is where he can start to turn and get upfield. I do think this is going to be a big game for him.
If it is, I think Kansas City is going to be very happy. I think that they're going to score a lot of points if they're able to get him involved and he has a big game. I think that they really need to consider trying to get the ball to Tony more. And it's not necessarily – I know a lot of people are going to hate that because of the week 1 game. But you can't have him just have 15 snaps and expect him to do a lot. I think that if you want him to be useful in this offense, it's how does he fit into this offense? You see him running back around Patrick Mahomes on the back end a lot in the motions that Tyreek used to do. I'm not saying he's Tyreek, but they're still using him in that sense in different ways. Get him involved in the offense. Get him some easy completions, and then get him doing double moves. He has the ability to make a double move with his jitterbug-type steps and completely shake off a CB and be wide open. Use that to your advantage. I really want them to get Rice involved, but getting Tony involved right now in this offense, I think, would be a big help and a big boon.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and that fits right into one of our listener questions. Pono Kawhi, hope you're doing well. Who can make a difference, and do they have to go out and get another wide receiver? Well, I think actually what you just said in getting KT on some dedicated passes and not doing so much gadgetry with him, let him get down the field a little bit, and I think that will start to provide a little bit of separation. Are they looking around? I'm sure they are, Pono. You got to check everything out, right? Especially at this point in the season, going into October, knowing that the deadline's coming up. But I do feel like this could be a point where they start to turn and this wide receiver room comes together. So mahalo for the question, but I don't think they're going to be looking actively just this week. We'll see what happens after it.
Well, and I will say, looking at Mahomes' games from last year versus this year, wide receivers, I think, are within 50 yards of where they were last year, and they have the same amount of touchdowns that they had last year. So while it seems like they're struggling, and I don't necessarily disagree with you, they're not being a lot less productive than they were this time last season. And the Chiefs were able to go win a Super Bowl. I think that they have to get the offense in figuring out how they can get all the receivers that they have involved. But part of that's also going to just decide, okay, we're going to run with maybe these 3 or 4 guys, and those are going to be our 3 or 4 guys, and they're going to get the Lions load of the snaps until we get this offense going, and then maybe you can sprinkle other players in. But you have to get them going in the right direction, and you have to give Mahomes quick, easy throws to get those wide receivers going in the right direction as well.
And the quick game is a remedy not just for the quarterback, but for the wide receivers too. You know, you don't have as much time to allow catch-ups. You can make your quick cuts. And I think that will actually provide a little bit more separation when the ball's looking to be delivered and less double clutching, et cetera, from the quarterback. One other question from Brian Gales. Thank you, Brian. Do you think Spags will go to a 3-4 scheme? I think we might see some 3-man front. I don't think it'll be a 3-4. I think that's going to go into the dime packages, et cetera. There will be times, I think, where we only see three guys rushing on the line, though.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I don't think that you'll see a ton of 3-4. I do think that there's possibility when Bolton gets back that maybe you'll see a couple snaps here and there, but I don't think that they're going to do that with Bolton now. And quite frankly, if he's not full go tomorrow, I'd sit him another week. Tranquil has played very good, and they're already on a short week going up against the Broncos on Thursday night. Give Bolton a chance. Even if he can't play this game or the next game, they don't have another week and a half to wait for the Charger game. Tranquil has been playing very well instead.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And there's no reason to rush. We're talking about attrition at the end of the season, so you want to let him have the best shot to come all the way back. I completely agree with you. That said, it is that time, and I think I'm up first this week. In the end, this feels again like a game that could tempt the Chiefs to play down to their competition. This team is not really rolling on all cylinders in Minnesota. You can't really blame them for that. You know, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, you have to stomp on somebody that's ready to be stomped on. And a 1-3 team like these Vikings that has a number of weapons that you feel you can concentrate on, that should do the job. The way this defense is playing makes me feel pretty good about it. So as long as there's no giveaways, and I think Patrick learned his lesson last week. He seems very contrite about his role in putting that game in jeopardy last week. I think he takes care of that. And at the end of the day, I think they get to 31, and I don't think they let the Vikings pass 17. That's how I see it.
If they can get to that point, I think that'd be fantastic for Kansas City. I'm not as bullish in that regard. I do think they win this game. I do think they score probably 27, maybe 24. It really just depends on how much they're able to get things going on offense. But you look at the Vikings, and I think they're a better team than their record states. And the reason I say that is if you look at who they played the Eagles, and they played them in a tough game, but they turned the ball over 4 times. Obviously, you can't do that and win a game. So the question becomes, does Kansas City force Minnesota to make those types of play, or to make those types of mistakes? If they do, this game could get out of hand very quickly, because if the Chiefs get turnovers in short fields, Mahomes is going to put up points. It's just a matter of time. So to me, I think it's 27. I could see the Vikings scoring 14-17. So I'm going to go 27-17 at this point.
So there you have it. We both have the Chiefs winning this ball game by somewhere between 10 and 14 points, something like that. We'd like to know what you think. Put your comment with your prediction in the comments here on the YouTube channel, or in the reviews over on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're getting the feed for this show. We very much appreciate that. We want to know what you think and your feedback. Like always, we're going to be live post-game and give you our thoughts, along with Matt Derrick, beat reporter from Chiefs Digest. You want to make sure that you're with us there post-game so you get all the updates. A lot happens in that couple of hours when a game is over. And if you want any breaking news, you can join the text line. Get signed up over there. It's 816-357-8781. You can get that on there. A lot of back and forth via text makes life a little bit easier for folks. So see if you're interested. Give it a shot and see what you like. I'm excited about this game. I hope you guys enjoy your weekend. Chris, good luck to you and your weekend, and we will regroup for this ball game coming up. Have a great weekend. We will catch you post-game after the Vikings.